Yes, shalom. In concluding this part here, plagiarism, question mark, slash logic, giving honor and praise unto the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. Let's understand something from the concept that has been taught to certain people. You're saying that Egypt is all good, and everything that came from Egypt was good. So if the Bible is one of those things that came out of Egypt, then how is it bad? That's one thing. Secondly, the concept of saying that somebody plagiarized something by using one or two words within a sentence is extremely weak. See, the ancient Egyptians did not create the voice box. So if I'm saying eat and bread in the same sentence, that is not exclusively to the ancient Egyptian culture. If somebody writes down and say that as the night approaches, the lions roar and they looking for their meat from the Most High, they're not plagiarizing from Akhenaten. You understand? So sometimes we have to just sit back and use our own logic and thinking. When you read, for instance, they attempt to state that Psalms 104 is plagiarized from the hymn of Akhenaten. What were they talking about in each of those things? Akhenaten is talking about what he's talking about to the sun god. The author in the book of Psalms is talking about what they're talking about. And because they use words that were similar, lion, roar, sun, going down, these people then have sat there and calculated the idea of saying somebody must have plagiarized. No, nobody plagiarized. The Egyptians themselves never even claimed to have taught the Hebrews anything. You notice they never sit there like in those debates and so forth, ever bring forth any Egyptian documents stating that we influenced the other peoples. There is no Egyptian document stating that they taught the other people of the world around them. And if they were to bring forth a document as such, that also, as known, will be a bullet to the other people's foot, because then that means the Egyptians acknowledged other people on earth besides their own selves. So what happened to these other people that the Egyptians recognized on earth? Like, for instance, in the Merneptah Stela, whatever happened to the people of the core people? Whatever happened to the people of Tejenu? Whatever happened to the people of Kati? Whatever happened to the people of Israel? All of those different peoples and other ones are mentioned in like some of the Egyptian records, like the Stela of Merneptah. Merneptah saw black people. You understand? So now we can sit back and possibly ask then, what happened to those different nations? That's not something that most other people care to talk about or care about. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the people who push the whole kemet thing don't even care about kemet. They really don't. Because if you did, you would have sat there and been highly, highly offended and never been in support of, well, they digging up the pharaohs. And part two, when we went over the principles of Ma'at, one of the things that was stated in there is that it says, I have not violated or desecrated the deceased. You was not supposed to go inside of those tombs and dig up the dead. So you look like a clown trying to sit there and ask Israelites to dig up the dead of our ancestors because some European man decided to go in Egypt and dig up the dead pharaohs. No, that's ridiculous. We went over in another video entitled Hebrew and Kemet Debate Presentation, and the word debate is put in apostrophes if you ever care to look it up online. It was taboo inside of the Egyptian culture to even dig up the dead there. So why you use that as a litmus to ask Israelites for us to show you dead when you was never supposed to see the dead in the first place? I ask again, and if anybody cares to make a video to this video or a response to this question at the minute being at 5:19, 5:20 in this presentation, please sit there and answer, why do y'all ask Israelites for us to show you all the dead when the people in Egypt were not even supposed to have been dug up, and the only people who dug them up were the same Europeans that you're supposed to not like according to your theology, according to your teaching? Every papyrus that speaks about the homosexuality, that's not translated right. The European man did that. If that's the case, then why are you still looking to that same European man as a catalyst concerning the house of Israel? Why are you asking or stating to Israelites that the white man don't sit there and view us as being Jewish? Why does he get that much clout and play from you all? Because they control you all. That's why. They just did it. Instead of pumping up the Christianity to control, they pump up Egypt to control. That's all that they've done. Jesus Christ was a black man who they killed, and have the people now going around sitting up there thinking that he's white and everything of that sort. So is it the same when they dug up those different pharaohs? Because of all the pharaohs, King Tut is the only one that's whole from beginning to the end. His whole body, everything else is a hand missing or an arm missing or a limb missing or so forth and so on. And they'll now sit there and parade Tut all over the different parts of the earth. So now they took another black man who lived and existed and have him up paraded around. Do you know, brothers and sisters, that in slavery, they used to sit there and cut off our limbs during slavery and after slavery during the lynching era and sell our body parts? But you got black people now in the so-called conscious community that are okay with white people going into those tombs and digging up the dead and try to use that as a catalyst against the house of Israel. You have lost your common sense. You have traded your brains in for a man's wisdom because he has a degree in a university. The same university that is funded by the government. The same government that is in cahoots and entwined and trying to make sure they eradicate anything black off the face of the earth. That's why they bombed Iraq the way they did, so that way they can sit there and try to sit there and hide any representation of the black ancient Sumerians. Now, they got a video going around talking about King Tut was a European and he had European features. So now you got to sit back in the Kemetic community and sit there and explain, no, boss, it's not like that. You see, the nose looks like that with Tut because when they did the mummification, it looks a little straighter. But no, massa, he's not white, boss. That's exactly what they got y'all doing now. Because even if you look at the Egyptian records, you was never supposed to go inside and dig up the dead. So now because you praise that white man for going into the land of Sematawi and digging up and desecrating the Ramses, the Thutmoses, the Amenophids, and so forth and so on, and all of those kings that ruled from the ancient days that even the prophet Isaiah spoke about. Because Egypt had their wisdom. Egypt was doing their thing. Understand, when the Torah teaches us that we are not supposed to abhor an Egyptian because you was a stranger in his land, is because we're supposed to overlook any wrong offenses that the Egyptians happened with us and move on for the greater good of humankind. That's the spirit of Deuteronomy 23, verse 7. You understand? So, with that being stated, and with that being said, you now have a situation in which the same violators have gone into the black tombs and didn't want to sit there and state that these people were Caucasian. They give you a European bust-looking thing of Nefertari as a white woman soon to come. They actually sit there and try to show these things. When they show ancient Egyptians, do you know what they try to sit there and show? This. Just to give you an example. This is what they try to show in certain cases. One of them Ptolemy looking type of women. You understand? One of them 32nd dynasty type of looking type of women. That's what they actually show in the movies. So your argument is not with Hebrew Israelites, my brothers and sisters into the Kemetic science. Your argument is with the same people who have violated the same culture of Israel. You understand? So this is why this has to be noted and understood. When you're sitting up there saying that the Jews of old were white, like Chancellor Williams did in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, I did a video on that entitled, Which Scholar Told the Truth? Compared what he said, compared to what other scholars have said. That the people in the scriptures was black, but according to him, the people in the scriptures was white. But you know, just like religious people, well, white really didn't mean what he was saying is Caucasian. White really meant, no, you need to read that book on page 337 and see what the man is talking about. Stop being on some ride or die stuff for another man who cannot help you. Like the prophet Isaiah said, wherefore should thou be in fear of man, and whose nostrils is the breath of life? He's no more of a man than you. He's no less of a man than you. We're all men. You understand? And so now getting back into this particular subject right here, you hold these scholars up as a catalyst. And then when asked, when it becomes personal, are you okay with your relatives being dug up? You have to sit back and then sit there and state, well, no. So that means that you are supporting the oppressor then. The scriptures teaches us, support not the oppressor and choose none of his ways. That's in the book of Proverbs. Envy not the oppressor and choose none of his ways. And that's what many people in the so-called conscious community have done. It is an oppressive thing to go inside of a culture and dig up the dead bodies. It is an oppressive culture that this European man has. It is a very sick fetish. You see them sometimes in the corporate world, perhaps too, sitting down there having lunch inside of cemeteries, want to build buildings on top of slave burial grounds, and so forth and so on. Man has no kind of respect for life or for those who are resting in peace. And they got our people following in suit behind this man with no respect of life or those who need to be resting in peace. When they went in to the tomb of Seti, and who ruled in the 19th dynasty, we went over this in another time too. The ground that the ancient Egyptians had set up was booby-trapped, and when they went in there, several people passed away. They died because the ancient Egyptians were very staunch in making sure that their pharaohs were to be protected. They had a concept in ancient Egypt of what we would today in certain cases call the afterlife. That's why, as weird as it might seem to a Hebrew Israelite, but it was very common knowledge to the ancient Egyptians to put gold inside of the tomb. We teach as Hebrew Israelites, you can't take that gold with you when you die. Ancient Egypt had their own concept. They didn't care what the Hebrews had to say. They was putting that gold inside the tomb for their pharaohs for the afterlife. When you see that big ship that they had inside the tomb of King Khufu, is so that way inside the Egyptian mind, he can float in the sky with the gods. That's how part of their culture was. They took their culture serious. This is how you know the people who are supporting the whole Kemetic thing, but they're not even supporting the culture of it, but trying to speak about the science of it, you actually are disrespecting yourself and the ancient Kemetic culture. But as stated in the other video done about the February 8th debate scam, nothing that's fake will last. Fake Israelites included. So with that, shalom. Enjoy.